across the departments in the Ministry of Power, from Energy Resource Department to Transmission Service Department, Distribution Service Department, Renewable and Rural Access Power Department, then other support departments in Finance, HR, General Services, and so on and so forth. Then our foot soldiers, who directly oversee the implementation of all government policies in the power sector, starting from the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, like I mentioned earlier, the Transmission Company of Nigeria that handles the transmission segment, 100% owned by government, the Rural Electrification Agency, which is responsible for renewable energy and rural power implementation, rural electrification, and also plays major role. Another major milestone was the presentation of the Integrated Resource Plan, IRP, which is a strategic roadmap that prioritizes least cost electrification and optimized energy resource utilization. We have energy resources across the country. How do we achieve the least cost generation, the least cost transmission, and the least cost distribution for the affordable million Africans that the World Bank and AFDB want to give energy access to? Nigeria is in a position to claim nothing less than 25% of this, which is about 75 million Nigerians. So when we presented our compact, they agree with us. As it is today in Nigeria, a country with over about 240 million people, we have access for 150 million people already, while about 80 million people lack access to adequate electricity in Nigeria. The issue is not really about access, it's about the reliability of this access. And reliability is measured in terms of stability of the access and affordability of this access, which is what we are working on. So when we are presenting our compact, we told them that when you are extending energy access to this additional 300 million people, let's not focus on renewable energy alone. It should be appropriate for rural environments, rural communities. But we should also focus on strengthening the grid infrastructure so that those that already have access, the access will be made reliable. Otherwise, how do we explain a lot of Nigerian companies who have opted out of the grid and started generating captive power for themselves? It's because of non-reliability of the existing access. So we have to focus on the infrastructure, both power evacuation, transmission, and distribution infrastructure, and they have agreed with us. So Nigeria is a major focus of Mission 300. And just 2 days ago, I held a meeting with the country representative of the World Bank, the new vice president, who agreed with all our submissions. In 1984, when Alhaji Lukman was the Federal Minister of Power, we achieved 2,000 megawatts of power, 35%. If you remember, when we made the presentation last year, we envisaged that government subsidy will be about 3 trillion for year 2024, based on the old tariffs. This was reduced significantly by 35%, decreasing it from the envisaged 3 trillion subsidy to 1.94 trillion in 2024. That is a clear-cut reduction of 1 trillion, which should have been paid by government. So this demonstrates that financial viability and service delivery can coexist harmoniously. Still on market reforms, the establishment of the National Independent Service Operator, NISO, marks a major milestone. The new Chief Executive Officer of Nigeria Independent System Operator, Alhaji Abubakar, was introduced. And someone asked me, do you have any agency called NISO? I said, yes. NISO is just a week old. It was actually created and inaugurated last week on the 8th of April by the Vice President with the approval of Mr. President, even though we've been on it for the past 1 year. So I want to congratulate you for your appointment as the MDCU of NISO. This may not be clear to a lot of laymen. The creation of NISO is in line with the requirement of the Electricity Act of 2023, which mandates the unbundling of the Transmission Company of Nigeria into the Transmission Service Provider, TSP, and the National Independent System Operator. This separation ensures clarity of purpose and independence of the system and market operators. It is important to note that this initiative has been attempted severally in the past, with failures recorded, but under the renewed hope agenda of Mr. President, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, the board of NISO was inaugurated by the Vice President on the 8th of April, which will now independently manage grid operations to enhance efficiency and reliability. Let me take a second to enlighten us a bit on this, why this is very important to us in achieving stability of the national grid. The TCN, Transmission Company of Nigeria, as we all know, which has been fraught with a lot of difficulties and poor performance in the past, until recently when all these reforms are being carried out. They perform basically two functions. Transmission service provision, which is TSP. That's the provision of transmission infrastructures for the Nigerian national grid, which is provision of high tension cables, provision of towers, provision of substations, transformers, and all sorts of that. Then we have the system and market operators, who are the ones responsible for transporting energy itself from the point of generation to the point of distribution. It's like you have the case of the provider of the vehicle and the driver of the vehicle. We have matched them together in the past. There is no clear-cut distinction between the activities of the independent system operator and the transmission service provider. So if the driver is not driving well, we don't know whether it is the driver who does not know how to drive, or it is the vehicle that is driving that is not good. Now we are separating the two functions. We will measure the provider of the vehicle separately, and we will measure the driver separately. When the provider of the vehicle hand over a damaged vehicle to the driver, he will shout and tell me, no, TSP, I don't want this infrastructure, maintain it, replace it, so that I will not be measured based on your damaged vehicle. But before, because they are together, they cannot criticize themselves. TCN is just one. So now we have separated it. The provider of infrastructure is separate, and the driver of transmission activity is separate. I believe this marks a new beginning for our transmission activities, and we're going to see better service in achieving grid stability. Thank you. In alignment with the Electricity Act in the past months, regulatory oversight has now been successfully transferred to Plateau and Niger states in the first quarter of 2025, making them 11 states now with independent regulatory oversights. Furthermore, regarding addition to these impressive generation initiatives, Sun Africa Energy and Skipper Electric are keen to invest in Nigeria's power sector, emphasizing renewable generation and grid expansion. What we have today on our grid are just two types of power: the hydropower and the thermal, that's the gas power. But with the abundance of sunshine that we have in Nigeria, nothing stops us from having a utility scale solar power generation. And we have two companies that have expressed interest in this. We have evaluated, and discussions is at very, very high stage. Number one is Sun Africa, who actually intends to bring in about 1,000 megawatts of solar energy to complement the effort of NDPHC at their various locations. And this will go straight into the grid. That's adding solar power on our grid. Then the second is Skipper Energy, who have also decided to construct modular solar power plants in the 19 states of the northern part of Nigeria, about 100 megawatts each, so that each state will be independent and the independence of national grid will be reduced. This will ensure that we have solar power in our national grid. So, furthermore, the process of full evacuation from Zungeru and Kashibila hydropower plant is underway. Zungeru currently has capacity of 700, but we are only evacuating 450 megawatts out of 700 because of infrastructure shortages. So we are focusing on that to ensure that the remaining 250 megawatts is evacuated, and that will be an increase in our power generation. Then Kashimbila, which is in Taraba State, also has capacity of 40 megawatts. Currently, we are evacuating about 10 megawatts. We are going to work on that. So we are in the initial phases of developing the Makurdi hydro project and revitalizing the Kaduna thermal plant. Makurdi hydro project is a large hydro project of about 1,500 megawatts, because we need to start planning for the future. So we can't wait until we exhaust the existing generating companies before we start introducing new ones. So we have started work on Makurdi, and we have the Kaduna thermal plants, which was constructed by the Federal Ministry of Power. It is 87% completed, but was neglected for 6 years. Since 2018-2019, they have stopped work on it. So I personally inspected it and ensured that we got Mr. President approval for us to complete this project, and it has a capacity of 215 megawatts. Before the end of the year, the Kaduna power plant will be in operation, I can assure you. So, feasibility studies too, because we have a wind farm in Katsina, which is a 10 megawatt wind farm, which has also been abandoned because of some challenges that we experienced on this project. The PS was in Katsina last month, and we have agreed with the Katsina state government and some private investors that they will take it over. And that will also empower the state's markets for electricity to ensure that they are able to develop, complete this project, and enjoy the 10 megawatts of power. Thank you. So let me leave generation. But before I leave generation, there was a World Bank study that puts our hydropower capacity in Nigeria at 14 gigawatts, which is 14,000 megawatts. As it is today, we are only exploiting less than 20%. Among Kanji, Jeba, Shiroro, Zungeru, and all other dams, we don't have up to 3,000, but we have dams all over. So we are looking and working with United Nations International Development Organization, UNIDO, on a project called Sustainable Power and Irrigation in Nigeria, Spain, for which they have set $500 million aside to ensure that all these our small hydro potentials across the strategic corridors in Nigeria are fully exploited. And we also want to thank Mr. President for introducing the Badagry-Sokoto Highway, which will provide access for us to exploit all the dams along Lagos, Oyo, Kwara, Niger, Kebbi, and Sokoto. This will give us enough access to exploit all the dams. Then lastly, we are looking at a situation whereby wind energy is further exploited. But when you talk about wind, you talk about desert wind, which we have across the north. Then we talk about coastal wind, the offshore wind across the coastal states. Thanks to Mr. President for Lagos-Calabar Highway. Because the major problem with wind energy has always been access. How do you access the coastal areas? But now, with the coastal highway from Lagos, Ogun, Ondo, Edo, Delta, Bayelsa, Rivers, Akwa Ibom to Cross River, those 9 states do not have any excuse not to exploit the wind energy potentials of their coastal borders. So we are working on that, and we have commissioned studies to invite private investors. So lastly, we are discussing establishing frameworks for private sector participation in investment in the national grid. The MD of TCN is here. We have various offers from private investors. National grid is owned 100% by government, but I can tell you, with other ministries competing for funds, we cannot fund the national grid alone. It's an expanded national grid. If you look at the grid, I will give you the features of the grid. It's too large, and there are some dedicated lines which some private investors have expressed interest. And with NISO now, it will be much easier for us to invite the private sector investors and let them finance construction of new lines, construction of new substations, and introduction of new transformers, and they will be able to benefit from the proceeds of the wheeling charges from the discos and the gencos. Now let me move to transmission. Transmission expansion and grid stability. For purpose of a little education too, a lot of people think the Nigerian national grid is just a pack of unassembled gadgets that collapse on maybe a little intervention. No, it is a wide network of electrical installations across the length and breadth of Nigeria, over 1 million square meters of landmass. So the Nigeria transmission network currently comprises 92 lines of 330 kV covering 9,504 kilometers, and 141 lines of 132 kV spanning 8,558 kilometers, interconnected through our 57 existing 330, 132, 33 kV and 186, 132, 33 kV substations. That is over 250 substations across Nigeria. This backbone infrastructure is supported by 91 power transformers of 330 kV voltage level with 14,000 Naira 78 MVA capacity, and 392 transformers of 132 33 kV providing 19,238 MVA capacity. And do you know what 1 MVA means? 1 MVA means 2 500 kVA transformers combined. That is 1 MVA. And we are talking of almost 35,000 MVA capacity. So it's a huge grid to cover to over 200 million people. And it's been there for so long, and we know that the maintenance history has been poor, replacement history has been poor, expansion history has been poor. So it is old. So collectively enabling our grid 8.7 gigawatt operational capacity as of today. If we grow our generation to 8,700 megawatts, the grid can still carry it. Thanks to the activities of the TCN and the FGM Power Company. 2 years ago, once it gets to 5,000, the grid collapses. Then we have evacuated 5,800 successfully without the grid blinking. It was still stable. So we can transport, thank you, 8,700. To strengthen this critical network, TCN commissioned 61 new transformers, totaling 5,589 MVA in 2024. That's 61 new transformers, followed by 9 additional transformers in Q1 of 2025 across key locations in Lagos, Benin, Bauchi, Osogbo, Kano, and Kaduna. We have the list of the sites in there. And again, I once mentioned that TCN had over 100 unfinished projects. In the 2025 appropriation, we already have 25 billion naira to support TCN to complete some of these projects, and that will also improve power supply. So beyond TCN, we have the activities of the Presidential Power Initiative, which is being executed by the FGM Power Company. The pilot phase delivered infrastructure across 13 locations, adding 700 megawatts to the national grid. We experienced a number of grid disturbances towards the end of last year. But since January up to today, 4 months into the new year, we have not seen any major disturbance to the grid. And I can assure you, we do everything possible to maintain and sustain the current scenario. If there is any little disturbance, our turnaround time is being worked upon. Within 1 to 2 hours, the grid will be up. So we have FGN activities in Abuja, in Kogi State, in Delta State, Edo State, Plateau State, Lagos State, Kebbi State, Niger State, Kano State, Lagos, Oyo, and Ogun State. The activity is nationwide, and we can see the impacts. So, due to the process of the pilot phase, we have the approval of the President and the FEC, that's the Federal Executive Council, to proceed to phase 1 of the PPI. Hence, contracts have been signed with Siemens, CIMEC, SWD, and Power China, and financing arrangements are at advanced stages to support implementation. Now, we are leaving the pilot stage of Siemens project, we are moving into the phase 1 stage, and the impact of this will soon be felt by Nigerians. So, another remarkable initiative is the progress made to regionalize the national grid. The Eastern and Western Super Grid approvals currently in progress will revolutionize our grid, reducing failures and creating redundancy. We have all said that what Nigeria needs today is a regional or regionalization of the national grid, so that if there is a problem in one part of the country, it will not affect other parts. Having a single national grid that will be down 100%, it is not desirable. So we are taking steps to make sure that we regionalize this grid through introduction of the Eastern and Western Super Grid. This project is on, and we hope to have FEC approval for it as soon as we come back from Easter. Then let me not waste time and move on to distribution. I've talked about onboarding of TCN. In the distribution segment, we have made significant strides in closing the metering gap and expanding last mile electrification. Two fundamental pillars that ensure fair billing, boost revenue recovery, and bring power to underserved communities. These initiatives are transforming our distribution landscape from estimated consumption to measured accountability, and from energy exclusion to universal access. Let me now highlight our distribution in our achievement in these distribution segments. I just need 10 more minutes, I will round up. Yeah. The launch of the Presidential Metering Initiative, which is backed by a 700 billion naira FAC allocation. The fund is ready to acquire meters under the Presidential Metering Initiative. This is a coalition between the federal and the state government. And the chairman of that PMI today is the governor of Kwara State, Alhaji Abdurrahman. I serve on the board, while the SA Energy to Mr. President is the secretariat for this initiative. Today, we have a new SPV, which has been set up with the board, fully constituted to lead the implementation. Before the end of December, we target 1.1 million meters by the end of 2025. The procurement process has started, I can assure you, and we have a plan for 2 million meters annually for the next 5 years, and the procurement process has started. If we add 2 million meters annually for the next, it's 10 million meters, plus 1.1 for this year, that's 11.1 million meters. This will cut off our meter gap, which currently starts at about 6 to 7 million. And in addition to that, through the World Bank funded Distribution Sector Recovery Program, DSREP, over 3.2 million meters will be procured and installed alongside meter data management solutions for DISCO optimization. Today, we have completed the procurement process of DSREP. 75,000 meters have already arrived in April, and we are expecting additional 200,000 meters in the month of May. Before the end of this year, 1.3 million meters will come from the World Bank funded DSREP program. Lastly, the distribution companies are currently undergoing restructuring aimed at enhancing service delivery and operational efficiency. Furthermore, new acquisitions and management modifications are being implemented among the DISCOs, while the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission is reinforcing the performance measurement matrix for the discos to ensure they perform up to expectation. So, those with fears about meter gap, you should be rest assured this will be in a thing of history very soon. We are taking practical steps to ensure that meters are acquired en masse and we close the gap. So, now, the PPI projects also cover infrastructure improvements in the distribution segments. We have awarded these contracts. They are not restricting it to transmission alone, but they will work on building new lines, distribution lines, injection substations, and supply of distribution transformers. And 2025 appropriation too has provision for transformer intervention by federal government for those communities without transformer.